Okay, thank you for being here for my capstone presentation today. It's a bit of an interesting situation because I am, of course, also a teacher in the school, but I do want to be honest that this project is something that's really important and meaningful to me. These are things that I've been working to do outside of my work at teaching and counseling, but just because I think they're really important. So in that regard, although it is a mock capstone presentation, it is very much personal to me. My topic, as you can see from the slide behind me, is school connectedness. And it's something that's mattered to me for a long time, probably like many of your capstone projects as well, things that have been important in your life. And so hopefully that connects with you today. My capstone is also interesting because it's an example of one that definitely morphed. So I had a really clear idea when I wrote my proposal, my mock proposal for our class, of what this was going to be. And you can see I've included my essential question here. So originally it was, what method and online delivery model or service would encourage the greatest number of youth at risk of mental health crisis to reach out and get resources, support, and connection? In addition to being probably the world's longest sentence, it is definitely something that is important to me. But I'm going to tell you that I did change, and I'll explain why I changed in a second. My journey kind of flipped. And it's now become, how can I create and celebrate cultures of safety and connection with the students I work with so that we can improve mental health and encourage seeking help when they need it. So let's talk a little bit about, if you're okay with it, talk a little bit about why. And the point I switched was when I was doing the research stage. And I had laid out 3 things that I wanted to do originally. The first was, I wanted to do a survey of youth to learn about access, specifically accessing the help. And it was interesting because I actually had a conversation with a colleague and they were like, man, these helplines, they're getting too many calls. And I was like, oh yeah, that is like, maybe we need more calls, we need more places for people to call. And then we stopped and we thought, and we realized, like, wait a second, that actually just means people are using the service. That's actually a good thing. And maybe that we were starting to break the stigma around mental health. And so that was the first kind of crack in the armor that made me go, hey, maybe I want to focus on that a bit more. And I also was looking at barriers. I'm fortunate enough to sometimes work with a psychologist down at the Northeast Mental Health team. And we had a couple conversations about accessing resources. And she talks about how a lot of people really struggle to get from school to their office. It's like 13 blocks away, straight north, and they don't make it. Something happens between being here at school and making their 4 o'clock appointment. Probably what happens is mental health, I figure. And so I was like, okay, well maybe we can do something more within school. Maybe that's where I can be more helpful. And then the third part was what already works in the internet and hotline world. And I was doing a little bit of research and I was looking at the Mercury report, which is an annual report we do in Vancouver and elsewhere. And what we were realizing was that people actually do access the supports quite a bit. And so my original idea of like, let's build a new platform, a new way for students to access support was maybe kind of redundant. I was gonna like reinvent the wheel. And so, my little light bulb. I feel like I had this moment where I was like, oh damn, why don't you make it less about accessing and more about changing the culture so that people will access and get what they need. And so I decided, well, you work in a school, maybe you should actually do that in the school. So I changed everything. And so, you like my photo, I hope. It's nice, right? The classic journey shot here. I thought I was making a website, and I wanted to instead find ways to celebrate students. I had a mentor. It wasn't an official mentor, like in the capstone sort of mentor, but I did have a mentor years ago, and they made this super clear to me, and it really stuck with me, that in schools, it's the places students feel safest are the places where they feel respected and they're celebrated. And so I thought, how can I make this school a place where we celebrate students more? And so I got going on what I did. And there's kind of 4 points to what I was thinking. The first one, and it does include a few of the people in the room here actually as well, and perhaps in the photo as well, all of which gave me permission to do this, is being involved in our Here for Peers group. This is a presentation group that goes to elementary schools all over Vancouver, all of our catchments. Even this year, in the third year I've been involved, we've gone to 22 different elementary grade 6, 7 classrooms. And we talk about mental health. And we talk about stigma. And honestly, at this point, mostly I just facilitate it and they do everything. And I've come to realize, one of the little side things I've realized about my journey is that people actually can be lifted up and then just do everything. We need to find ways to encourage students to be the leaders they already are. And so this is a mental health workshop. It's 70 minutes in length, and these are some of the people who have presented over the last couple of years. It's a photo from last year, actually. But yeah, it's incredible work, and it's really inspiring to see. And the young kids get to see these grade 10, 11, 12 kids that they really look up to, and it raises them up, and it celebrates them. And it makes talking about mental health easier. And so that was the first thing I decided, is to continue staying involved in Here for Peers. The second one, the second part of my journey was around community building with volunteering. And it's actually an idea that I originally straight up stole. I'm gonna be honest. I stole it from a good Scottish friend of mine. Maybe you've heard of his name's Murray. He runs a leadership resiliency program at our school for 8s and 9s. He's awesome. And he and I teamed up to do our school hamper drive. And one of the things that we found was that students actually would often donate to the hampers if they themselves would be a family that was receiving. And over the last 4 years, we've given out, on average, 100 hampers per year for the last 4 years to support our own families. And that's been a big part of wanting to create connection and create a safe space and to encourage leadership within our students. And so that's been something that's been part of the journey. The third thing that I wanted to do, and I have to be honest, I haven't done either of these two this year. Parts of both of these were in grade 8, 9, and 10. Well, my grade 8, 9, 10 years. But you may have seen these around the hall. This one we've done a couple times, the pink sheets. They say, "I think you are amazing," and people write reasons in for why, and we've hanged them up often in February. We didn't do it this year, but we've done it in the past. With the support of some of my grade 11s. And this one was a really empowering one, I think really speaks to what's important to me, and that is we've made a couple signs. This one, last year's, said, "I wish I knew someone who ... And some of the most authentic and real things came out of people's Sharpies when they were given a pen and asked to write. And it was really cool to see. People were able to reach out in a meaningful way and say things that maybe would have been difficult. It was, I don't know, inspiring, I think is probably the word I would use. Yeah, so those are two public space displays that I've wanted to be a part of. And then the last one, and this really speaks to what I believe is most important, going back to the whole journey switch that I was mentioning. If we're gonna celebrate students, we have to actually celebrate them, right? It's cool to have a public space, it's cool to give them opportunities for leadership, it's cool to talk about mental health and destigmatize. We need to also celebrate these people. This is at the heart of what's most important to me. And so for the last few years I've been organizing, and we've had some winners of this as well in the room, our Breakfast of Champions, which is a once a year recognition of students selected by their teachers for nothing that has to do with marks or how good you are at sports or how many volunteer hours you have. That happens at grad, and that's good as well, but we wanted to talk to the people who have gone through difficulty and had to show resiliency, who have incredible work ethic and diligence, who inspire other students with their leadership and their inclusion. And so we've created the Breakfast of Champions. This is actually a shot from just last month of, not all, but most of them. About 100 students were winners, and I think that's about 80 of them right there. And so that's a big part of trying to really celebrate students. And I find, I gotta switch my slide here. I find that doing that actually increases the likelihood that those students will come talk to me. So if they know that I've been there and I've recognized, they in turn, if something is difficult, will access the supports, whether me or the hotlines or whatever else it is. And so that's really important. To be honest, and this is something I am, knowing that we're videotaping this, it's on my mind. I worry a little bit, but I want to be really honest and say, I've had to learn to not take it personally if other people didn't want to be part of that. Sometimes I get an initiative and I want to share it with the school, and other staff might just not want to do it. And that has sometimes given me a bit of a setback. And I've had to learn, and I think I've gotten better at this over my time, gotten better at being able to say like, okay, this is the wagon, get on it if you want, otherwise have a great life, here we go, we're gonna go do this. And I definitely try to encourage the students I work with as well to basically encourage those around you to celebrate how awesome you are, and if they don't want to, that's on them. So that's something I've definitely had to learn and I've struggled with a little bit. I think I take things personally more than maybe the average person does. I've also learned that little actions have big impacts. The student that I least thought would be impacted by the Breakfast of Champions nomination came and saw me later that day and said, "You don't even have me in your grade, you don't know who I am." It's true, I didn't know her name. She's like, "But this has been the worst month, and this felt so good." And I thought, damn, sometimes you really can have a big impact with something small. And so as I go from here, I'm often trying to think like, well, this isn't the end. I'm hoping not to die tomorrow. What's the next step in the journey? And so I've decided this is kind of where I'm thinking of going, like from my capstone beyond, this is what I want to do. So one, I want to have more student-led initiatives. I'd like to get a group together next year of my grade 11s that will be grade 12s and look at like what sort of things do we want to do to continue this. Stop making it the Mr. Van show. There are way better ideas with other people. Number two, more mentorship between students. Started doing a little bit of this with the Leadership 11 students and some here for peer students with the grade 8 math kids. I think the grade 8 kids are saying we want more of this, so I'd love to get some more mentorship. There's too many awesome people in this building not to take advantage of so that we can work with the younger students. And then number three, more inclusion of unconnected staff. I had a moment earlier this year where I was like, whatever, don't care, not working with these people, didn't want to be a part of it, wagon is left. And then later I've looked back more recently and I've thought like, okay, don't get so stuck on yourself. It's okay to like feel frustrated, but don't just write